Traumatic events are nearly ambiguous to the human experience. A general and global poll conducted in 24 countries and published by Boston University found that nearly 70% of respondents had experienced at least one traumatic event in their lifetime. Furthermore, 30.5% said that they experienced at least 4 or more events. Suzanne Ellison spent her childhood growing up in Asia, the US, Europe, and Africa, and the exposure to all of these different cultures served her well and gave her a broad outlook and unique perspective on how the world works and a different approach when it comes to dealing with life and the things you experience. She's learned through her own personal experience of having anxiety, depression, and ending up on the operating table on how powerful our thoughts are in creating our own individual reality of how life really is. She joined me this week to have a discussion on how to effectively manage our anxiety, mental health, and depression as we emerge from COVID to hopefully become a stronger society at large. I'm Kevin McShann. Let's have this conversation. We began our conversation by Ellison explaining how she helps people unpack and deal with their chronic pain, which they don't realize was caused by past traumas.
So it's kind of a combination because different people react in different ways, don't they? So I think the main lesson that I like to share is how powerful our thoughts are in what happens to us in our life. And when we hold on to or we don't resolve past issues that we've experienced, like traumas, or, even broken relationships or things that people have said to us in the past, opinions that we then take on board as being fact, and we create beliefs around. People don't realize how powerful our words are and our thoughts are in terms of the results that we get in life and things that we want to have in life that we struggle to achieve because our thoughts or something that somebody has said to us in the past, we're holding on to that and we give it so much power over what we actually want,
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that your childhood was a big part of the impact that it's had on your life growing up all over the world in the US, Asia, Europe, and Africa. So I'm wondering how that experience has sort of impacted the way you look at life and the human experience.
Oh, I think, as a kid, you're like a sponge. Everything that you're exposed to, you're just looking and absorbing and processing, and you're taking that on board. And I think when you travel as a child or a youngster, and you're exposed to different cultures. Going from America, I was actually, most of those years were actually in Hawaii, so you're exposed to the native Hawaiians and the way they did things and the way they thought. And then going to Asia, Indonesia, and again, totally different culture and the way people engage. And well, this is it. I mean, after Asia was Africa, and that again is such a unique and totally different culture and people's beliefs and what's okay and what's not okay. And when you take a little bit of all that from each one, I think now as an adult, it really makes you realize that we all have different beliefs and ways of doing things. There's no one right way. And when you focus on yourself and you do the work on yourself and you ask yourself why things happen the way they do or what results you want that you're not getting, we find so many answers that a lot of people don't realize they have the answers that they're looking for. But we look to our outside world, what I call our outside environment, as opposed to our internal environment, which is ourselves, for answers. When in fact we've got the answers, we just need to do that bit of work on ourselves and understand how powerful our thoughts are in manifesting and attracting what we have in our life today. And if we're not happy with it, we have the ability to change. You can't go to a doctor and say, I'm ill, and then not tell him the kind of thoughts you're having. He doesn't know what kind of thoughts you're thinking. So if you don't give him that really important piece of information, just having a tablet for your anxiety or for a health condition he thinks, his tablet might help isn't enough. We actually have the power to help ourselves far more in some ways than a doctor does.
Yeah, sometimes, taking ownership and self-empowerment can help, huh?
Exactly, yeah. Oh, it's so much easier when it is self, you do it for yourself, because you know what you're doing and you've got all the pieces, and if they don't fit, you can play around with them. Whereas if a doctor gives you something or somebody gives you advice and it doesn't work, and then you got to go back to them again and say, well, this didn't work, what else can you give me? Whereas when we do the work on ourselves, we've got all the pieces.
Ellison provides her perspective on what it means to live an emotionally balanced and fulfilling life.
It's easy and it's not, because to live an emotionally balanced life is to, if you think that 98% of our thoughts are on autopilot, and we're only aware of like 5% of what we think, of the thoughts that go through our heads. So if you're not in a good place or you're not getting good results, it's a case of turning all those thoughts off of autopilot and onto manual, and checking in with yourself and saying, why do I feel like this? Why am I having this thought? What's making me feel sad or unhappy or angry? Again, it comes back to us having the power. But if we don't check in with ourselves, so, I'm depressed, and I'll say to a person, well, why are you depressed? Oh, I don't know. Well, gee, if you don't know, how am I going to be able to help you? So if you want to have emotional balance, you need to check in with yourself and ask yourself the question, why do I feel like this? What's happening in my life that's making me feel like this? Because that's the question that needs to be asked. And sometimes people can't do that for themselves. You need somebody else to be on the outside looking in, to be able to see what's not fitting right in your life. So sometimes you need help to get that balance. But a lot of the time, once again, we can do it for ourselves to a large extent. And then maybe if there's one or two sticky points, we can get help with that. But I think the main message is that ask yourself the question, why do I feel like this? Why am I unhappy? Why am I depressed? Why am I anxious? Why do I feel stressed? And don't just stop with because I hate my job or because I fell out with my partner. Well, why does that matter? Why, how does that make you feel? If you stick with your emotions, you'll always get the answer eventually, but it's not necessarily the first answer you come to. You have to keep asking until you can't ask any more questions. And then you get all the pieces of the puzzle. And it makes a lot more sense to get that balance that you were asking about.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also know that you have a 3-month program for women in midlife who are tired and deluged and want to break the cycle of chronic anxiety and self-doubt. So I'm wondering if you can tell me about it this morning.
This is it. It's a really good question because especially with COVID, anxiety is kind of taken over for so many people. Just being anxious about their health, about their loved ones, about themselves. And again, it's everybody experiences anxiety. Everybody does. It's what keeps us safe. If you feel threatened, anxiety is what clicks in and says to you, are you going to stay and fight your way out of this, or are you going to run away and hide and keep yourself safe? So, but the anxiety I'm talking about is when it keeps you awake at night wondering what's going to happen tomorrow and how am I going to find the answers and where am I going to get the money to pay the bills and, how am I going to get my partner back because I do really love them, and that kind of ongoing anxiety where you're constantly doubting yourself, constantly questioning your decisions that you make, to the point where you end up paralyzing yourself and not achieving anything. That's the kind of anxiety that I want to help people with and address, because again, it affects their lives. And when you're anxious all the time, anxiety, negative emotions are actually chemical reactions that you're releasing into your body that are breaking your body cells down, which is why you then become ill and you weaken your immune system. So if you understand how to control that type of chronic anxiety, which again is about getting in touch with yourself, doing the work on yourself, healing past traumas and negative situations, giving yourself emotional surgery so you can have emotional freedom to go forward and create new situations for yourself, new memories, new happier experiences.
Absolutely, and I know that you've spent most of your professional life self-employed, and you've also used your own lived experience dealing with your own anxiety and depression and those issues to sort of guide the way you help the people you work with and live your own life. So I'm wondering how your own lived experience has impacted the way that you want to help other people.
I became a dairy farmer. We've already said I grew up traveling around the world with my parents. So it wasn't like I was born on a farm or anything like that. But then when I got married, I actually started making ice cream. And because I wanted to be self-sufficient in my own ingredients, I got a few cows, and a few cows turned into a herd of over 400 cows. So whilst I had my dairy products, I also now had this dairy herd to look after. And you kind of get into situations that you don't always plan. And whilst it was an amazing life, in the whole picture of my life, I wasn't happy. And it made me anxious because what I didn't pay the bills, and I had employees to look after, and I had 2 daughters to raise, and things just weren't working out. And I just found that I realized I was living my life constantly feeling anxious and being, happy one minute and down in the dumps the next and all depressed. And I realized that, this isn't who I am. I used to say it to myself all the time, this isn't who I am. And we become that way because of the experiences we have and because we don't know how to deal with them. And my thing is, there's a lot of people out there now in exactly the same situation, and I want to use my experiences and how I got myself into a better place, a happier, healthier place, to help others do that. So it's to be anxious all the time is not normal. It's not normal, and I don't think people really fully appreciate how it affects their level of health. And there are so many autoimmune illnesses out there, and when you look at what they don't know what causes them, but the one thing that almost all of them have in common is that they're stress related or anxiety related. And I think if people realize that if they got their anxiety under control, and then once again they looked behind the anxiety, what's causing the anxiety, and they learned how to deal with that, then they would start to get the results they want. They would have the better health that they want. And that's the message that I want to help to share, which I learned and now share with others.
Yeah, absolutely. And tell me, during this time, we're all sort of on edge, and mentally our health has to be put under an increased microscope. So I'm wondering if you had any thoughts on how people can effectively manage their mental health.
I think the thing is, when I say to people, well, why are you depressed? Why are you worried? And they go, oh, I don't know, or I've just always been like this, or my mother was an anxious person and I've got the genes. No, that's not how genes work. We all have genes. We all have cancer genes. We all have other bad, elements, but we're not born with those illnesses. If you're not born with those illnesses, then something has to trigger it. And when you let go of responsibility, which is what you're doing by saying, oh, well, I've got the genes for anxiety, or, the government this, or COVID that, you are actually giving control away. And what you need to do, if you've got mental health problems, you need to just be kind to yourself. This is not about judging or blaming. It's about a lack of understanding and a lack of information. And if you have mental health problems, you can do so much for yourself just by asking yourself, why? Why do I feel like this? Because again, it goes back to emotions. And what I teach is the method I use is an energy and emotional based therapy. And again, it goes back to what I said earlier. You look at what's happened in your past and you make peace with it, you resolve it, and you disconnect the negative emotion that's attached to that memory. So if you've had trauma in your past, or child abuse, or you're a war veteran and you've got PTSD, or you've been in a car accident, or you've been traumatized by being in a relationship, everything that we do has an emotion attached to it. And if it's a negative emotion, you want to disconnect that negative emotion from the memory of that situation. And what it does is it's like pulling a plug out the wall, because emotions are energy. And when you resolve the emotion and use, I use tapping, I use, as I say, an energy-based therapy to disconnect and to neutralize the emotion, then a person starts to heal And it's in that healing that your mental health starts to improve. No. It's the negative emotions that we hold on to that make us age, that make us angry, that make us feel bad. And when you let go of negative emotions, because good emotions are good emotions, aren't they? They make you feel good, So when you think how bad you feel when you hold on to negative emotions, why would you want to hold on to them? Yes, learn from them, but then let them go. Resolve the situation. Don't keep reliving the past, because right now with us talking, this is us now making new memories, new experiences. We're not reliving a past situation. We're creating something new that will create a new memory and a better memory. That day I had a great interview with Kevin on his podcast, And that's what you want to do. Every day, every moment is an opportunity to make new memories and new experiences.
Yeah, Suzanne, I live my life with a motto that I want to help people maximize their fullest potential. So every day is a new day to make a difference, right?
Exactly. But if you keep thinking about, but I'm no good, and I'm not this, and I'm not that, because somebody 10 or 20 years ago said that to you, then you won't make the most of the moment, will you? Because you're reliving the past. You're spending this precious moment reliving what happened 10, 20, 30 years ago. So it's about let go of the past and let's go forward and use every opportunity to create new experiences and happier memories.
Absolutely. And Suzanne, I'm curious to ask you, for you personally, what's the best part about or aspect about living life, and how do you think you would want your personal or professional legacy to be defined?
There's so much knowledge with the advent of the internet. There is so much knowledge out there. And I think, what I always told my daughters was to, and it's what I say to myself, every day I ask myself, have I tried to improve on the person that I am and to be the best and to make the most of each day and the time that I have each day that I've been given. Every day is precious. Every day is special. And to make the most of it. And I know when somebody is not well, what I've learned, come to realize more and more, is people need a starting point. When they're in a really bad place and they've got mental health problems, or they're depressed, or they've got just general health problems, they don't know where to start. And my thing is, it doesn't matter. Just do something that is different and that is positive and makes you feel good in some way. And when no matter where you start or what it is, just by starting that first time, things will then slowly improve and snowball. And the thing is, the happier we are and the better we feel, our body will sort itself out to a large extent. As much as it can, it will improve, because that's what it's there for. It has the ability to heal and improve itself.
Absolutely. And finally, Suzanne, tell me, if people want to get connected with you, what's the best way they can do that?
You can find me on Facebook, you can find me on LinkedIn, and I've got a website. Just type in my name, Suzanne Ellison, EFT. EFT is Emotional Freedom Technique, the energy therapy that I use, EFT, or just Suzanne Ellison, and you'll find one of my profiles.
Fantastic. Well, Suzanne, I really want to thank you for spending a few minutes with me to talk about physical, emotional, and mental health. It's really most appreciated, and I want to thank you for being here and for your work in the space. It's most appreciated, and thanks again for a few minutes.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you for having me and for letting me share my message.